This could happen to anyone. This could happen to you. It could happen to you today. What I'm going to do today is on another Inside the Incident video is I'm going to talk about a incident that I came across as a civilian, as an off-duty firefighter. So I want to tell you guys, I want to walk you through my process. What does a firefighter look for? How does a firefighter think when off duty? The hope is that you guys can use some of these tools as civilians and employ them if you come across an incident in your day-to-day lives. So the scenario was I was driving with my family, personal vehicle. We were on our way home. We had spent a long day out doing some errands and such. So we're driving down the highway, down the main highway in my area, and traffic was flowing pretty well. Now, brake lights started to appear ahead of me. Now, as we got closer to the incident, vehicles started pulling over. I was driving in the slow lane, and I could see up ahead a pickup truck that was parked very close to what appeared to be parked very close to the concrete median, kind of half on the shoulder, half in the slow lane. And vehicles were just pulling around him. So I probably, like everybody else, assumed, hey, this fellow's got a flat tire or something like that. And I also pulled into the fast lane and pulled around him. However, as I was driving past, I looked over my shoulder and I could see the driver, and he was just kind of hunched over the steering wheel, just kind of like this. It took me a second to realize it, but I've been to a number of calls as an on-duty firefighter where we've been called to an accident or something like that, where someone has had a medical emergency or there's an unresponsive patient in a vehicle, let's say in a parking lot. I recognized it right away that, hey, something's not right here. So immediately I pulled over back into the slow lane, as close as I can get to that concrete barrier on the right-hand side. And I said to my wife, I think this guy might be in trouble, actually. I don't think he just has a flat tire. When I looked again, I could actually see that his truck not was parked against or near the concrete barrier, but had actually kind of driven up on it a little bit. And it was pretty obvious that this person didn't park. It was a vehicle accident. They had crashed. Okay, so the first thing that I'm thinking about, especially with family in the car, is safety of myself and of my family. So if I'm going to jump out of the vehicle to go see if I can assist someone who needs help, first of all, I need to make sure that I'm not putting my family in harm's way. It does no good if I go run around trying to help somebody and then my family gets smoked by a semi while sitting on the highway, right? So I got that vehicle, my vehicle, pulled right over as far as I could, and then I backed up close to the vehicle that was in the shoulder. The reason why I'm doing that is, let's say there's an oncoming driver coming up behind us, and they're not paying attention, they're on their phone. If they don't see the accident and they drive right through it, honestly, I want them to hit the parked car behind my family. I don't want them to hit my family. I am arriving on an accident scene and I'm there to help. I am not going to put my own family in jeopardy just to see if I can assist somebody. So I parked my car in front of the accident. If I'm in the fire truck, I'm going to park that fire truck behind the accident to block that accident scene, to keep our firefighters safe, keep any patient safe. But as a civilian, that's how I'm operating right now. I'm operating as a civilian. I parked my vehicle in front, and I would encourage you to do the same. Okay, so once I had my personal vehicle and my family in a safe location, I got out and I ran back to that vehicle. Okay, so I get up beside the vehicle and I'm in a bit of a precarious spot because I'm standing on the driver's side. I'm standing in the slow lane, probably halfway into the slow lane of the traffic as highway traffic is still pulling around me. I start banging on the window, no response from the driver. He's still slumped over. Okay, so this tells me we've got some sort of medical incident. I don't know the nature of it. I don't know the nature of the injuries, but this individual needs help. So I ran back to my car. And on my phone, I asked Siri to phone 911. I have 911 saved as a contact in my personal cell phone so that I can just say, hey, Siri, phone 911, and it dials 911 for me. So I got that going right away. And then I actually left 911 kind of on hold for a second because I had stuff I needed to do immediately. So I run back to my car, and you would think maybe as a firefighter that I'm super prepared and I got all the rescue and emergency equipment in my personal vehicle. Not the case. I probably should, but I didn't. So I ran back to my car just to see what I could have to break a window if I needed to do that. And my family and I, we had been camping recently, and in the back of our SUV, I had a splitting maul, like a big axe. So you take what you can, and I grabbed that, ran back to the vehicle. Okay, firefighter rule, always try before you pry. We don't want to be breaking windows, smashing doors just to find that they're unlocked. So I tried the driver's door. It was locked. The passenger door was pressed right up against the concrete barrier and couldn't be opened. The individual had a dog in the back that I could see. So I decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to need to break this window. I don't know if the person is in cardiac arrest. I don't know what's happening. It's warranted to break a window in this scenario. So I'm like waving to traffic as it's driving around me, trying to flag someone down to help me, to get a second person to phone 911, because I've got 911 kind of asking me what the problem is, and I'm like trying to break the window, and there's a lot going on. What you'll notice in these scenarios is when you stop and you try to help someone, there's oftentimes the general public, they don't seem to notice. And I'm not saying it's because they're bad people or they don't care, but as civilians, they're often not in the mindset of, here, I'm here to help people. I'm looking even subconsciously for people who are in trouble. And it may just be a firefighter trait, I'm not sure. But I've had this happen a couple of times where I've had to intervene as an off-duty firefighter, just simply as a civilian. No one knows who I am. And it can be difficult sometimes to get civilian help. So people are just driving around me. I've literally got my axe out. I smash out his driver window. Now, if you ever have to break the window of a vehicle, break a side window. On pretty much every vehicle, the windshield is laminated glass, which means that it has a layer of plastic in between the glass layers. You're not going to be able to break that with an axe or a sharp tool or anything like that. It's meant to not shatter in an accident, and so as firefighters, we actually use a saw often, and we'll cut it out. So you want to break a side window. Ideally, I would have had a glass breaking punch or something like that, where I could have used a spring-loaded punch or a little hammer with a sharp point, and I could have broken the window that way. Not prepared as I should have been, so I just had my axe. So if you have to use an implement where you're actually like baseball swinging into the window, you have to be careful that on the follow-through, that your implement, in my case my axe, or if you're using a hammer or something like that, is not impacting the patient, right? What'll often happen is people will do like a half swing because they think glass breaks easily, and they go bink, and it'll bounce off the glass, and then they go, oh shoot, I gotta break this, and they wind up and they just swing, and then when that glass actually breaks, that tool goes right through the window. So if you're not careful, you're gonna break the glass to help the person, and you're gonna put a hammer right through the side of his head, right? So if you're gonna break a glass, like I had to do with an axe, what you're going to do is you're going to line up the shaft of the tool with a hard object on that window, either on the upright part of the window or on the horizontal part of the door. And the reason why you do that is that when you swing, if the glass breaks, your tool stops when it hits that hard piece of metal. So that's exactly what I did. You aim for the corner because that's where it's going to shatter easiest. Aim for the corner, low corner. Swung. It actually took me 2 or 3 swings because I'm not used to breaking glass with an axe, with a splitting maul, which doesn't have a lot of sharp points on it. And so I think it was on my 2nd or 3rd swing, I broke that glass, and the tool stopped right on the edge of the door. No impact to the patient. All the while I'm doing this, I'm literally baseball swinging an axe through a guy's window on the side of the highway in the slow lane, and no one's stopping. Everyone's just driving around you. They just think it's a normal day. I don't quite understand it, but it's common, and you just have to be aware of that when you stop to help somebody. Okay, glass is broken. I now have access to the inside of the vehicle. The next step, your safety. Okay, so this vehicle was still running, and the transmission was still in drive. It was an automatic transmission. It was still in drive. The vehicle had simply stopped because it was wedged up against the concrete barrier. So if I jostle this car, if I move it, if someone rear ends us, even if they only bump us going 5 or 10 miles an hour, they could dislodge that vehicle and it could take off. So when I'm evaluating this and stuff like this, I was aware of this. I am not going to be working in front of that vehicle. I know that any sort of movement could send this vehicle rolling towards me and possibly run me over, as well as possibly run into my family's vehicle, which is parked just 30 or 40 feet ahead of them, right? So the first thing I do is I reach inside, put the transmission in park, turn off the vehicle. Now I know it's safe. I then reached inside, opened up the internal handle on that door, got it open. Okay, so the whole time this individual is still unresponsive, right? He's bent over like this. His color looked pretty good, but I couldn't initially tell if he was breathing. So this is first aid in the real world. I just grabbed his head and I lifted it up. Now, this is a motor vehicle accident. By the book, technically you should be at least conscious or aware of the potential of a spinal injury, right? And we don't want to be manipulating someone's head and neck if there's the potential of a spinal injury. However, we also have competing priorities where we say life over limb. So if I don't know if someone's breathing, if I don't know if their heart's pumping, as much as I want to be gentle with that head and neck area, they're dead if their heart's not pumping. So I need to make sure that he's got a heartbeat, and then I'll be gentle with his neck. So I lifted up his head just enough so that I could feel the pulse on his carotid artery. He had a pulse, okay? About this time, I was able to pull out my phone. 911 had been asking me repeatedly for information and stuff like that. So I just said, hey, I need an ambulance. I gave my location on the highway between these two exits, this direction, etc. And then what I did is then I tried to arouse the individual. So we'll do kind of different steps in our protocols. So first of all, you just try to cause them to increase level of consciousness or gain consciousness just through verbal means. Now, I had been banging on this guy's window. I had smashed out his window with an axe. There was no movement. He was not responding to verbal or to audible stimuli. So the next level that I go to is a pain stimuli. So I reached in and I grabbed kind of his trapezoid muscle here, and you give it a good squeeze. You squeeze as hard as you can. And he started to kind of come around with that pain stimuli. So he starts to moan, right? He opens his eyes, and then he went back unconscious again. Okay, so this is telling me this individual, they have a heartbeat. I've checked their pulse, and they're breathing. Okay, so my next steps, I've got no medical equipment on me. Again, maybe I should, but if you're like me, you could just be driving along, you have no equipment, perhaps even no training, and this is just what you come against. So what I was left to do was maintain this individual's airway. So if they're bent over like this, there's a good chance they're not maintaining good airflow, right? And that is obviously critical. So I needed to maintain his airway, and I also needed to try to keep him awake. So if he had any sort of mental capacity to keep himself conscious, I needed to engage that, because if he's conscious, then he is going to maintain his airway better than I can, right? So I just sat there with him, squeezing on his trapezoid, and then he would wake up, and then I'd let go, and he would, after 20 or 30 seconds, he'd fall asleep again, and then I'd squeeze him, and he'd wake up. Beyond that, I don't really have anything else that I can do to intervene other than to try to keep him awake, keep his airway open, and monitor him. Now, if his heart had stopped beating, I would have been dragging him out of the car, dragging him in front of his car, and I would have had to start CPR. But as long as his heart's beating and there's no danger, no fire, etc., it's safest for me to leave him in the car. If there is a driver who's coming, who's not paying attention, and they impact us, well, he's going to be most protected in that vehicle. I'm still standing on the outside, so I'm exposed, and that's just a hazard, and you just have to be aware of that, and that was a risk I was willing to take without any protection kind of ahead of me or behind me, if you want to use the flow of traffic in that way. So I'm just making sure he stays conscious and his airway stays open. So I gave further information to the paramedics or to the dispatcher. They sent paramedics. They sent the fire department. Once the firefighters were on scene, they were on scene first. Then I just gave him a real brief. The first firefighter who came up to me, I gave him a real brief just summary of what I had seen and what I had done. So I said, hey, I saw this vehicle pulled over. He was unresponsive. I broke the window, and then I've been maintaining his airway, keeping him conscious as best as I can. From there, it's handed off to the professionals. It would be handed off to someone like myself if I was on duty, and they have the proper first aid kits to provide supplemental oxygen to keep that airway open and manage it better with more hands, etc. From there, I just made sure that the on-duty fire captain, the officer, didn't need me to stick around. He said we were all good. I gathered up my axe and went back, joined my family, and we were on our way. So the takeaways that I want you to realize from this is that as a firefighter, even when I'm off duty, we are still considering safety first. I'm not going to put myself or my family in undue harm, in reckless harm to potentially assist someone else. So get your vehicle fully off the road if you can. Use that other vehicle as a blocker for you, right? If a semi-truck's coming through and he's on his phone and he's not paying attention, that's a bad day, but we want them to hit the vehicle that's already been in the accident. We don't want them to hit your innocent family that's just parked over the side trying to help. As I approach that vehicle, I'm never walking directly in front of it because I realize that there's a good chance that this vehicle is still running and the transmission could still be in drive, meaning any sort of movement could dislodge that vehicle and I could get run over. I try before I pry. I try the handles on the doors. Once I realized that the door was locked, then I had to go towards the step of breaking the window. Once I realized that the patient was still unresponsive, broke the window, made the scene safe for me, put the vehicle in park, turned off the ignition. Then I managed the airway and I just monitored until the professionals were there to assist me. So I hope that was helpful for you on another Inside the Incident video. You guys take care.